Welcome back. Let's look at immutability. Some classes in Java are immutable, which means that the contents of the object of those particular classes will never change. Now, what does that mean? Well, by default, classes and objects are mutable. Whenever we define our own class and create objects out of it, they have a particular state, and over a course of time, when the program is executing, we can go ahead and change that state. We can change what its variables contain, and that is what we call mutability. Objects can change their state and therefore they are mutable. However, there are certain classes which are immutable. Whenever we create objects of those classes, those objects cannot change their state. And whenever we try to change their state, what Java in the background would do is it would go ahead and create a new object of that new content. And we have actually used a class that is immutable, and we have used it quite extensively. Any guesses? Well, it's string. Yes, string is immutable, but we have used it quite extensively. We really did not know that it was mutable, and we'll look at how immutability works with a string example. But before we get into immutability, I would want to look at what mutability means and how that looks. Now let's look at some code. Firstly, we create a class called int wrapper. And this class does exactly what the name says. It's actually a wrapper on an integer. So if you look at here, all this class has is an integer, and this class acts as a wrapper on top of that integer. We have also created a constructor just to make it easy to create objects of this particular class. Alright. Next, we have created a public static void main, where we have created A and assigned it to an int wrapper with 10, and then we have created B and assigned A to B, and then we have modified B.integer. We have added 10, and then we are printing out the integer in A. Okay, we are not printing out the integer in B, we are printing out integer in A. So any guesses what the output would be? Well, let's go ahead and execute it. And when I execute it, I get the output as 20. Okay, so what exactly happened over here? Let's do a dry run. Let's look at what is happening in the background. When we say A is equal to new int wrapper of 10, what happens is a new object is created with the value 10, and a reference called A is created, and A will refer to this new object. That is what happens on line number 1. Then what we are doing is we are creating another variable called B, and we are assigning A to B. So another variable called B will be created, and B has to map to whatever A is referring to, in which case what will happen is B will refer to the same object. A new object is not created over here. It's just that we have created two references. The second reference will also point to what the first reference is pointing to. So it will point to this particular object. Then what we are doing is we're going ahead and modifying the integer in B, and we are adding 10 to it. So the object that B is referring to is still this one, and therefore what it will do is it will go ahead and modify this 10 to 20. And then finally what we are doing is we are going ahead and printing out the integer in A. A is this one, and A is pointing to the same object, and therefore when we say print A dot integer, it will go ahead and print this. So this will print 20. And this behavior is very common in Java, where we create one particular object and then we make various references refer to that particular object, and whenever there is a change in the state, like the integer over here was modified from 10 to 20, that change will be visible to all the references that point to this particular object, right? This is a very normal behavior. And just to showcase again that only one object is being created, I'm going to run this program once again, but this time I'm going to run it in the debugger mode. I'm going to put breakpoint over here, and then I'm going to run it in the debugger mode, in which case we would be able to see all the objects that are created. So let's go ahead and execute this. What would happen is it will go ahead and run and stop at this point and wait for our command. We don't have to go any further actually. If you look at it, you can see that b.integer is 20 and a.integer is also 20. In fact, a and b both refer to the same object, and this is exactly what I was talking about. So whenever you assign b is equal to a new object is not created. What happens is this new reference will go ahead and refer to whatever this old reference is referring to, and that is exactly what is being showcased over here. Now let's look at another